everybody. Welcome back to The Common Law. I'm your host, Ed Berkman. I am a local attorney. I work for a law firm out of Beverly, Massachusetts. And here at The Common Law, we like to talk about everyday legal issues and try to break down complex legal ideas into digestible little bits so you can be more aware of the law. And if you're looking for something to be done, you can always maybe have the right questions to ask your attorney. Now, before we get started, I would like to just let everybody know, although I am an attorney, I am not your attorney. Any of the fact patterns or any of the topics that we discussed today or in any episode of The Common Law are just generalities. Nothing is to be based off of a specific fact pattern. So even if I'm talking about something that seems like it pertains to you, trust me, it does not. Even if you heard something that sounds exactly like the matter that you're dealing with, trust me, there will be subtle variations to your unique case, and you need to discuss those unique issues with your attorney. Now, my email address is at the bottom of the screen right now. If you do have a question for me, whether it's about the show or a legal question, feel free to please email me. I'd be more than happy to answer any and all of your questions. And I will not charge you to answer those questions. If it sounds complex, maybe I would suggest meeting with me or another attorney. We could discuss those further if it was too in-depth. But general question, please, by all means, email me and let me know. Better to ask than not to ask. The topic for today's program is going to go over corporate entities. Many of you may be running a small business. Many of you may be running a large business. Maybe you're thinking about starting your own business. All this information will be very informative for anybody in those sort of circumstances right now. Now, the first and perhaps the least legal of these sort of corporate structures would be known as what's sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship really has no legal entity that is created for it. You're basically a sole owner with sole control of a business, and your income is just reported on your personal income 1040 tax return. So some of the pros of that is that you do have that control, you do have that freedom, you don't have to pay any sort of annual fees or report anything to the government. You're basically just doing business and collecting money and reporting that on your taxes. Now, some of the some of the cons of a sole proprietorship is basically the owner, the person doing the work, has unlimited personal liability for any of the affairs of your work. So you're really not protected at all from any sort of liability. If you did something wrong, they could sue you for it. Creditors can also go after your personal assets if you were sued. So if you own a house, it's all fair game. There might be homestead exceptions like that, and we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty on any of these tonight, but just keep that in mind. So you have all liability and all your personal assets are at stake if you open up a sole proprietorship. Additionally, or I should say, moving on, there's also a general partnership, and this is a little similar to a sole proprietorship, but it's just dealing with more than one person. Again, both partners are liable as they would, and their personal property would be on the table if they were ever to be sued. What's interesting with a general partnership, though, is each partner is liable for all of the acts of the partnership, which includes acts of the other partner. So think of it this way: if you have a partnership with two partners and one partner does something wrong or something that could be sued for, both partners are liable for those damages. So just keep that in mind. You have to very much trust your partner, and I would encourage either of these options to have a great deal of liability insurance if you were to pursue either of these. The next type of corporate structure is a limited partnership. Now, this is similar to a general partnership in the fact that they have two or more partners that own the partnership. However, there needs to be two different types of partners in a limited partnership. At least one partner needs to be a general partner, and the other partner would need to be a limited partner. Now, the limited partner is only going to be liable for the amount that they've invested in the partnership. However, both partners are liable for the tortious actions of the other. So if one partner makes a mistake, the other partner could be liable for that as well, with the limited partner having a cap on that liability. Now, if you want to form a limited partnership, you can do so by filing a certificate with the corporate division in Massachusetts. And that certificate needs to say the name of the partnership. The name of the partnership needs to contain the words limited partnership. And basically, you just can't use any deceptive or similar names to any other corporate structure. I will say this again, if you ever were to go and file one of these, any of these corporate structures, a limited partnership, LLC, anything we talk about here tonight, you really should discuss this with an attorney first. I am just sort of laying out a couple of options here and just basically going over them. I'm hitting very surface level stuff here, folks. So I'm not going to get into the statutes or any of the specifics here. So just keep that in mind. The next corporate structure that we would talk about tonight is going to be probably the most common. This is called a limited liability company, also very commonly referred to as an LLC. So this is actually a separate business entity. You would create this, you would file this with the Secretary of State's office here in Massachusetts. And, we call LLCs here in Massachusetts that are filed with us domestic. You can also file LLCs in other states, and we'll get to some of those options a little later on. Those are known as foreign LLCs. So these are best suited for people who, want, there could be multiple, shareholders of the company. And you want, there might be different needs or liability protections for this. It's its own corporate structure, so the owners are going to have a lot of protection. Their personal assets won't be at stake, and they also don't need to file their corporate taxes. There's no it's known as double taxation. LLCs, you're just reporting what you make. You're not reporting the whole company's corporate structure. You're not reporting, you're just reporting taxes on your own. You're not reporting the company's taxes. And the liability here can be limited to the extent of the owner's investment, similar to a limited partnership. So the big thing here is the personal assets being protected. Now, profits and losses can be allocated differently, and that's usually based off of the owner's contributions to the LLC, whether money or equity, or some people call it sweat equity. The work that's being done, that's all based off of what governs this sort of creation, and that is the operating agreement. So you would file this. You'd create an operating agreement. It's basically the rules of the LLC. Now, it's really important that you have a well-written operating agreement. It's sort of like the Bible for the company. Again, this is something that you should speak to a lawyer about and make sure that they can go ahead and properly draft that for you. One of the things to be mindful of if you're creating an LLC is not to commingle your personal funds and funds of the LLC. we don't want to make anybody think that your LLC is not a true representation, not a true business. You're operating it as a limited liability company. You're not running it as a sole proprietorship. So don't commingle any funds. And LLCs can be used for a lot of different things. They could be used for creating a company that sells goods or services. It could also be used to put investment property in, or even vacation property in if you're collecting rent for it. It's a real versatile tool and has a lot of different uses. So these are very common. Couple of the, cons to running an LLC is you do need to file an annual report every year, and that has a filing fee with it of $500 here in the state. So every year you have to file that, and you have to pay that $500. Now, if you run into a situation where you fall behind and you stop paying that filing fee and filing that annual report, well, after 3 years, Massachusetts can administratively dissolve your LLC. So what that means is the LLC is canceled. If you continue to do business on a dissolved LLC, you could run into a lot of problems, and you could open yourself up to a lot of liability. Now, if you owned property and you wanted to sell that property out of an LLC, you would need to obtain what's known as a certificate of good standing from the Secretary of State's office. They will only issue you that certificate of good standing is if you are current with all of your annual reports. So what we see sometimes is clients will come in and they'll go 5, 6, maybe even 10 years without filing their annual reports, and they need to basically pay that $500 per year for every year that they missed. Now, I know I said after 3 years they will administratively dissolve you, and that's more of a guideline than a hard and fast rule. After 3 years, you can be administratively dissolved. It doesn't happen automatically. It's up to the Secretary of State at that point if he wants to administratively dissolve, your LLC or a group of LLCs that are, have with it. It's up to the Secretary of State to determine if he's going to administratively dissolve LLCs that may be behind on their annual reports. So as I was saying, if somebody falls behind on those annual reports and they need a certificate of good standing, they'll have to pay every year that they've missed. That could add up rather quickly, and you could owe the state of Massachusetts a bill of thousands of dollars just to get that certificate of good standing. And again, if it's real estate, you're not going to be able to sell it really without that. You're just going to create a title issue down the road if you are ever able to record a deed, without sort of that requirement. Now, if you have multiple investment properties and you wanted to put each one in an LLC, it will most likely be recommended that you put each of those properties into their own LLC. And the reason we want to do that is we want to make sure the liability of that property stays with that LLC. For example, if you owned 3 houses and you put all of them in the same LLC, well, now all 3 of those houses all share liability. So if there's an issue with one, those are assets that can be used in a lawsuit or to settle debts. If we put each property into its own LLC, now, though each property is only liable for the extent of the damages or tortious issues that arise out of that actual single property. Now, the caveat to that, though, is every year you have to file an annual report and pay the $500 for every one of those LLCs. So, what can people do if they want to kind of get around that? And there is an option, and that is what's known as a Delaware Series LLC. So this would be an LLC that we would file in the state of Delaware, and it would allow each, we call it a series, each house would be its own series in this example, and they would all be under one LLC, but they'd have different series. This is a great way to cut down on those filing fee costs, and while at the same time keeping each series or the assets within each series in their own sort of buckets. So liability can't be shared among multiple series, which is a really good thing. Perhaps the most formal of these corporate structures would be a corporation. So this is something that you would have. It's a completely separate legal entity with owners who are referred to as shareholders. This is usually set up for multiple owner businesses seeking both limited liability and, an established management structure. So you would have to have annual meetings. You would have to keep track of those meetings via something what's referred to as meeting minutes. You would have corporate officers, president, vice president, treasurer, all that stuff you would need to be on top of, and you would need to meet, semi-regularly. Now, corporations do have that sort of double taxation issue before. So the corporate structure known as the corporation would be paying taxes, as well as any of the money that you were paying yourself from that. That would be considered your personal income tax. So you might be paying double taxes. And that's really the only cons to that. This is probably just as common as an LLC, maybe slightly less. These are typically bigger companies with, that are going to be, managed, every day. This isn't like a side project. These are usually bigger companies. Moving on, we have what I would refer to as S corporation. Some people call these S corps. These are usually closely held corporations. Closely held means that their stocks really can't be traded on an open market. You can really only sell those to other existing shareholders, other owners. It's not like something that's going to be publicly traded. This is best suited for, usually you see these for small businesses, family businesses. Now, one of the benefits of this, similar to the limited liability company, the LLC, is you do avoid that double taxation. So it is a useful tool. So S corporations pass their income, losses, and deductions through their shareholders, who then report and pay taxes on them on their individual tax returns. Now, with a corporation, shareholders must be individuals, specific trusts or estates, or certain other tax-exempt organizations. The other thing about S-corps are they're subject to an additional tax. This is what's known as the stinger tax. We're not going to get into, the weeds on that right now, but just keep in mind, although you aren't being double taxed like you would with a regular corporation, there is an additional Massachusetts tax here called the stinger tax. Now, the pros of this, you have all the advantages of a regular corporation. You're only taxed once. And some of the pitfalls here is shares can't be publicly traded, although that might be a benefit for your situation. There's only one class of stock. Again, we're not going to get in the weeds. Corporations can have multiple classes of stock, so some are worth more than others. And, the administrative duties might be a little less than a standard corporation. Now, if you were to have own a business, one thing you may want to consider when you create a corporation, an LLC or an S corp, would be some business succession planning. This is a document that would control basically what happens when one of the, shareholders dies or leaves the company. Two common ones are, one is a redemption agreement. This is when a deceased owner's interest is purchased by the business itself, and that's usually done with life insurance proceeds. Those life insurance proceeds are paid to the company and are usually tax-free. The deceased owner's business interests will be includable in their estate at a fair market value. Fair market value would usually be the price of the buy-sell agreement. Now, there's another kind of business succession agreement you may want to consider, and that is what is known as a cross-purchase agreement. This differs from the redemption agreement in that upon the death of an owner, the remaining owner, rather than the corporation, will buy the shares from the deceased owner's estate. This is usually done with the remaining owner being the recipient of a life insurance policy in the name of the deceased owner. And again, the proceeds of the life insurance payable to the surviving owner will be income tax free. Now, we get into some of the taxing of this a little bit. The surviving owner is their stake in the company is also tax free. They get a step up in basis based on the date of their death. So, as long as it's done fairly, timely to the person's passing, that will be tax free as well. I'd like to thank you all this evening for joining me on this latest episode of The Common Law. I've had a lot of fun talking about this stuff with you tonight. Again, if you have a question, please feel free to reach out. And I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you and good night.